My wife just threatened to divorce me unless I give her access to my inheritance from my late father. I told her to go ahead and leave. She is filing papers thinking she will get half of everything in divorce court. She has no idea what is coming. I am Nathan, 30, 8M, licensed electrician here in Asheville, North Carolina. Been married to Valerie, 35F, for 5 years, together 8 total. Met her when I was doing electrical work at the dental office, where she works as office manager. She was funny, down to earth, seemed genuinely interested in me, not just looking for a meal ticket. Our combined income is about $130K. I make $78K. She makes $52K. We have lived comfortably but modestly. Nice apartment, reliable cars, occasional vacations. Never had major money fights because there wasn't major money to fight about. I thought we had a solid partnership. That changed 18 months ago when my dad died. Michael Harlow was 68, owned a small hardware store in town until he sold it 5 years back. Heart attack took him suddenly, peaceful at home, exactly how he would have wanted to go. I was devastated. Dad raised me alone after Mom died when I was 16. We were close, weekly dinners, fishing trips. I helped around his store growing up. He taught me everything about being a man. Work hard, honor your commitments, protect what your family built. When the will was read, I inherited everything. Dad was worth more than I had realized. $2, $8 million total. The hardware store sale had been invested well, plus life insurance and savings. He had been quietly building wealth for decades. At the reading, I watched Valerie's eyes widen when the attorney announced the amount. I could literally see her calculating. That should have been my first warning. Dad had left me a private letter with his estate attorney, Douglas Miller. I will never forget the key parts. This money is your mother's and my life's work. I have seen too many friends' legacies squandered by divorces. Protect this for your children, your bloodline. Put it in trust. Exclude spouses. You will thank me later. If Valerie loves you, she will not need access to this. Within 6 weeks of probate closing, I met with Douglas and set up an irrevocable trust exactly per Dalton D's instructions. All $2, $8 million went into it. The trust specifically excludes spouses from any access or claims. It cannot be modified or dissolved once funded. Professional trustees manage it, not me directly. I can draw modest income, but the principal is protected for future generations. For the first few months after Dad's death, Valerie was supportive. Take your time grieving, she would say. When she asked about the inheritance, I told her it was being handled by attorneys, and she seemed fine with that. Then the transformation started. Month 4, she began mentioning investments. We should buy a house. We can afford it now. I said we could look at houses in our actual price range, what our salaries could support. But you have the inheritance, she would say. I explained it was in trust for long-term wealth building, not spending. Month 6, she got more direct. Friends had bought expensive houses and cars, and Valerie was envious. Why are we still living like we are broke? She demanded. I told her we weren't broke, we were comfortable, and the inheritance wasn't for upgrading our lifestyle. Month 8, she demanded financial transparency. Wanted to see trust documents. Wanted her name added as co-trustee. Wanted access to accounts for emergencies. When I explained the trust, specifically excluded spouse access, she exploded. What? You are keeping me out intentionally. It is my father's legacy, I told her, for bloodline. It is separate property. You don't trust me, she screamed. This isn't about trust. It is about honoring my father's wishes. I am your wife. That matters more than a dead man's paranoia. Don't talk about my father that way. The fights continued for weeks. Her, we are supposed to be partners. Me, we are partners in our marriage. This money is separate. She couldn't understand the difference between marital partnership and inheritance protection. She delivered her ultimatum. We were sitting at dinner, and she went cold and calculated. I have thought about this. I need access to the trust. You know, that is not happening. Then I am leaving. I cannot be in a marriage where I am not trusted. I looked at her calmly and said, okay. She was shocked. What? If you need access to my dead father's money to stay married, then leave. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean that. If this is a deal breaker for you, we are incompatible. She started crying. You are choosing money over me? No, Valerie. You are choosing money. You are not entitled to over our marriage. I am choosing to honor my father's final wishes. You are welcome to stay or go. I will divorce you. I will get half of everything. I smiled calmly. You will not get half of the trust, but you are welcome to try. She moved out that week, went to stay with her brother John in Charlotte, hired an aggressive divorce attorney named Jessica Portman. Here is what they don't know. The trust structure is bulletproof. Inheritance is separate property in North Carolina, even when received during marriage. The irrevocable trust with spouse exclusion clause makes it completely untouchable in divorce. Dad and Douglas planned for exactly this scenario. Valerie thinks she is going to walk away with over $1 million. She is about to discover she will get maybe $15K from our joint accounts, and marital portion of my $401K. The mediation meeting is next week. When Douglas explains the trust structure to her attorney, Jessica's face is going to be absolutely priceless. Am I the asshole for protecting my inheritance this way? Or did my father know exactly what he was doing? Update 1. The meeting was at Douglas's office. Present were me, Douglas, Valerie, and her attorney Jessica Portman. Valerie walked in confident, almost smug. She clearly thought she was about to get a huge payday. Douglas started by presenting my financial disclosure. Joint checking account. $8,500. My personal savings. $12,000. My truck, $15,000 value, $401K, $45,000 total, with half being premarital. We rent our apartment, so no equity there. Jessica looked confused. Where is the inheritance? That is held in irrevocable trust, Douglas replied. Irrevocable trust. When was it established? Approximately 16 months ago. Funded 15 months ago. Jessica perked up. During the marriage. That makes it marital property. Douglas slid a document across the table with the slightest smile. Actually, no. Inheritance is separate property in North Carolina, even when received during marriage, and this trust has some specific provisions. I watched Jessica's face as she read. Her confidence evaporated line by line. This is explicitly excluding spouses, she asked. Douglas pointed to the exact language. No spouse of any beneficiary shall have any claim, right, or interest in trust assets. Trust assets shall not be subject to division in any divorce or separation. Trustees are prohibited from distributing to or for the benefit of any beneficiary's spouse. You drafted this? Jessica asked Douglas. I did, per the deceased settler's instructions and the current beneficiary's wishes. Jessica asked to speak with Valerie privately. Before they left the room, Valerie asked, "What does this mean?" Jessica's professional mask slipped. It means the trust assets are not divisible in divorce. There has to be a way there isn't. Irrevocable trust with spouse exclusion clause, funded with separate property inheritance. It is completely untouchable. That is when Valerie's face went through about 5 different emotions in 10 seconds. Shock, disbelief, anger. Then pure rage. You did this on purpose, she screamed at me. I stayed calm. I did it. Per my father's wishes, which I told you about. You hid this from me. I told you the inheritance was in trust. You just assumed you would get access. This is financial abuse. Douglas actually spoke up. Madam, protecting inheritance is not abuse. It is proper estate planning. Jessica took Valerie out of the room for 20 minutes. When they came back, Valerie's eyes were red from crying, and Jessica looked professionally defeated. What is available for division? Jessica asked. $401K marital portion, roughly $22,000. Joint accounts. That is it, Douglas replied. And the trust income. Mr. Harlow receives distributions, but trustees have discretion, not guaranteed income for division purposes. Jessica turned to Valerie. We should settle quickly. There is very little here. Valerie tried one last desperate play. Cannot we contest the trust? Say it was funded improperly. Separate property. It rounds. Jessica said. What about his father's intent? He didn't know me. Douglas spoke up. His father knew about your marriage. The trust was created because of it. The realization hit Valerie like a truck. He thought I was a gold digger. I spoke up for the first time in a while, and my voice was harsher than before. He thought you might become one. Apparently he was right. Douglas presented our settlement offer. Valerie gets half the joint accounts, $4,250, and half the marital portion of my $401k, $11,000. Total, $15,250. I keep my truck, personal savings, and all future trust distributions. No alimony since we were married less than 10 years, and both have jobs. Clean break, no future claims. That is it. Valerie exploded. After 5 years of marriage, you wanted to leave over the inheritance, I said. You are leaving with what is actually ours. Valerie stormed out. I am not signing anything. Jessica stayed behind and said to Douglas, give us 2 weeks. She needs to process this. 2 weeks, Douglas agreed. Then we file contested if necessary. She is welcome to contest, I told Jessica. The trust will hold. Jessica looked tired. I know. I have never seen one this airtight. As Valerie was leaving, she turned around one more time. You planned this whole thing. My father planned it. I executed it. Because he knew someone might do exactly what you are doing. I loved you. Then you wouldn't need his money to stay. The door slammed. Jessica lingered for a moment and said to Douglas with professional respect, that is the most bulletproof trust exclusion I have ever seen. Thank you, Douglas replied. The settler was very clear about protecting his legacy. I went home to my empty apartment and called my sister Claire. She knows now. About the trust. How would she take it? About as well as we expected. She is furious. Dad knew, Claire said. He really knew. Yeah, he did. 2 weeks later, she signed the settlement. There was no point in fighting it. Even her own attorney told her the trust was untouchable. She walked away with $15,250 after 5 years of marriage. But here is the real kicker. I found out she had been planning this whole thing for months. Update 2: Valerie initially refused the settlement offer. She hired a second attorney for a second opinion, got the same answer. Still filed a contested divorce claiming the trust should be divided as marital property. Douglas filed our response with all the trust documents. The judge reviewed everything in chambers and the hearing was basically over before it started. Miss Portman, your client is contesting the trust exclusion? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. The trust was created during marriage, the judge interrupted. With inherited funds? Yes. But inheritance is separate property in North Carolina. Trust structure doesn't change that. It is protective, legal, and common. I am upholding the trust structure. Division is limited to marital assets as defined by statute. Gavel down, case closed. Valerie was forced to accept exactly what we had offered. $15,250 total. Her car, her belongings, and that is it. No alimony, no claim to the trust, ever. After 5 years of marriage, she walked away with less than 20 grand. A week after the divorce was finalized, her brother John drove up to Asheville and asked to meet me at a brewery. I was cautious, but agreed. I owe you an apology, he said, right off the bat. For what? I told Val she was right, that you were being controlling. I was wrong. She showed me text messages. John pulled out his phone and showed me screenshots. Valerie had sent him months before her ultimatum. Messages to a friend from 6 months before she even made her demand. Nathan's dad left him almost $3 million. I am going to push for joint access once probate clears. He is sentimental about honoring his father, but he will come around. If he doesn't, I will threaten to leave. He will not risk losing me. My blood ran cold reading it. She had been planning this manipulation for months. The whole "I need access, or I am leaving" wasn't some emotional breakdown. It was a calculated strategy. She really thought you had cave, John said. She didn't know about the trust structure, I told him. Dad set it up to prevent exactly this. John shook his head. Your dad was smart. Our parents' divorce destroyed them financially. Val was always paranoid about being cut out of things, so she tried to get in first. I understand the fear, I said, but you cannot demand access to someone else's inheritance. John told me his whole family felt stupid. They had been pushing me to be generous with Valerie, not knowing the full story about the trust exclusion, my dad's letter, or her months of planning. His parents wanted to apologize too, but didn't know if I would want to hear it. I told him no hard feelings. This was between Valerie and me. He also updated me on how she is doing. Not well, apparently. She is living with her parents in Charlotte, burning through her divorce settlement money fast. Depressed, angry, isolated from friends who have heard the real story. She talks constantly about being cheated, but no one has much sympathy anymore. Meanwhile, I have been healing. Started therapy to process the marriage ending and my father's death all mixed together. Threw myself into work, and business has been growing. My sister Claire and I have weekly dinners now. She has been my rock through all this. The trust is performing well. 18 months in. It has grown from $2, 8M to $3, 1M through conservative investments. I draw about $40K annually in distributions, enough to be comfortable but not extravagant. The principal keeps growing for future generations, exactly like Dad wanted. I bought a modest house in the suburbs with money from the trust. The trustees approved it as a sound investment. 3 bedrooms. Nothing fancy, but it is mine. I have been fixing it up myself, doing the electrical work obviously, and some carpentry I learned from Dad. The peace of living alone in my own space, following my father's plan, honoring his memory. It is exactly what I needed. Some evenings I sit in my workshop in the garage and I can almost feel Dad there. Proud that I protected what he built. Final update: been pulling doubles for 2 weeks straight at work. Finally got time to write this final update. You guys deserve to know how this all turned out. 18 months, post-divorce, and life is exactly what my father hoped it would be. I am still doing electrical work, business is thriving, built a solid reputation around Asheville. The house I bought is perfect, modest but comfortable, with a garage workshop where I tinker with projects in the evenings. The trust is now worth $3, 4M after continued conservative growth. I could theoretically retire early in 15 years, living off trust distributions. But honestly, I love the work. There is something satisfying about solving electrical problems with your hands that no amount of money can replace. Last month, I got a message from an unknown number. Valerie had gotten a new phone and somehow found a way to contact me despite being blocked everywhere. Hey, it has been a year and a half. I have had a lot of time to think. I was wrong about the inheritance. About all of it. Can we talk? I stared at the message for about 10 minutes. Then I typed back. Valerie, I am glad you have had time to reflect. But we are done. What we had ended, when you demanded access to my father's legacy. I have moved on. I wish you well, but please don't contact me again. I blocked the new number immediately. That was all the closure either of us needed. According to John, we stayed friendly. Valerie is dating someone new and seems to be doing better. She moved out of her parents' place into her own apartment, found a better job. The $15K from our divorce is long gone, but she has apparently learned to live within her means. John says she still occasionally mentions feeling cheated out of the inheritance, but her new boyfriend knows the whole story and has zero patience for complaints about her controlling ex-husband. Good for him. I have been spending more time with family. My sister Claire and I are closer than we have ever been. We visit Dad's grave together once a month, usually bringing his favorite beer and just sitting there talking to him about life. Last weekend, I brought Douglas Miller to meet Dad, so to speak. We stood by the gravestone and Douglas said, "Michael, your boy did exactly what you wanted. The trust is solid, growing, protected. You would be proud. I think Dad would be proud. The hardware store money he saved, the life insurance he paid for decades, the wealth he quietly built. It is all safe, growing for future generations, protected from people who think marriage means automatic access to someone else's family legacy. I am 39 now, single, financially secure, and completely at peace with my choices. Some guys my age are panicking about finding someone, settling down, having kids. Me. I am focused on honoring my father's legacy, growing my business, and maybe someday finding someone who respects boundaries, instead of demanding access to what isn't theirs. The trust continues to grow. Every month, when I get the trust statements showing continued growth, I feel like he is still providing for family, still protecting what matters. Valerie chose money over marriage. I chose honoring my father over appeasing an entitled spouse. 18 months later, I know I made the right call. Sometimes in the evenings, I will sit in my workshop with a beer and look at the photo of Dad I keep on the workbench. Thanks, old man. I will say out loud. You saw what I couldn't. You protected us both. The house is quiet, the trust is secure, and Dad's legacy lives on. Exactly like he planned.